Well, Adam, this marks my 40th year in a row of not knowing why a Blade Runner is called a Blade Runner.
A Blade Runner is a bounty hunter who tracks down and retires replicants in the Ridley Scott film of the same name.
Yeah, I know what they do. I don't know how they get Blade Runner out of that.
Well, we'll answer that and all your questions today on the show.
Really?
Hell no, this movie brings up way too many questions. But we'll answer as many as we can, because it's a new Ford Fiesta! I'm Adam, I can imagine quite a wit.
And I'm Paul Priston. And if you followed or listened to the Movie Guys at all over the last 13 years or so, we've been doing pretty much this. And we brought someone along to do it with us this time. He spoke up early that this is the Harrison Ford movie he wanted to talk about. He's an old friend of ours, so we're happy to say Dave Sachs is joining us.
You know, we have some fun names at the top of every show, but the guest never gets one. Can we give Dave Sachs a fun name?
Dave Sachs 2049?
That'll do. Look, there's so much to talk about with 1982's Blade Runner, from the behind-the-scenes disagreements, to the multiple versions, to the legendary imagery and iconic sci-fi. We should get right to it. But who would we be if we didn't do our recurring segments?
Most podcasts, don't have recurring segments. We do.
Well, there's got to be an extra charge for that.
No, Adam, the show is still free.
That makes me today years old when I found out I'm not getting paid to do this.
Well, don't dwell on that, Adam. Instead, let's get to... what's new in the world of Harrison Ford? Let's talk about it because there's always something going on. And sure enough, he went to the Moving Target Awards in London. Well, he didn't go there. He sent a video tribute because Vic Armstrong received one of these awards. Vic Armstrong, of course, the legendary stuntman from Raiders of the Lost Ark. We talked about him last week. And, went on to have this incredible career since Raiders, moved into directing, and he's just a great member of the Harrison Ford verse. Armstrong has 123 stunt credits on IMDb, and Ford sent this tribute video for him and it said, "We've been doing this, Vic, for like 50 years. You've had the good sense to turn it into a directing job because this running, jumping, and falling down thing is a game for the young guys. It's been a great pleasure working with you, sir."
That's awesome. I think that's the first stuntman we knew the name of because they would do the PBS special where they showed the making of Raiders of the Lost Ark. You could only find out how 3 movies were made. It was like Raiders of the Lost Ark, Star Wars, and Superman the movie at that time. So yeah, Vic Armstrong. Yeah, there's a whole sequence in there how they did that. So even as a young little kids, like we've always known how that sequence was done. It's just so cool.
And I didn't write this down, but I remember when I looked up the article about the Moving Target Awards in London, I think there was also some kind of tribute to John McTiernan. So, do you know what his fall from grace was? Because I forgot. What did he do?
I bet the details are numerous on this, but it was a wiretapping scandal. There was some guy going around Hollywood trying to say, hey, you can get intel on other people or offering intel and sucked some people into a wiretapping scheme. And then once they got caught for one of those, they realized they'd been doing this for various people. I think Gary Shanley was in that trial. Yeah, so that was it for wiretapping, the wiretapping scandal, which I don't have a whole lot of details about. But yeah, did some jail time.
I guess time heals all wounds because McTiernan was honored at this thing. But I should have gotten all the information on that. But the point was, Vic Armstrong, Harrison Ford, there you go. And speaking of people close to Harrison Ford, when doing press for Sandman, Indiana Jones 5 co-star Boyd Holbrook, who you may know as the villain in Logan, and he was just in Vengeance, and I think he's like I said, he's on Sandman. He said of the new film, "I can assure you that it's going to be badass. I got to see like half an hour of it when I went to LA and I saw Jim Mangold. Just look at his work. Ford versus Ferrari, it's going to be fast, it's going to be badass, and it's going to have heart. All of his films have this emotional beat in them, but we've got this grand scale of Indiana Jones." So, Boyd Holbrook, proud and happy to be where he is, getting the chance to be in this movie. There's a new, Adam, you'll want to know this, there's a new line of Hasbro Indiana Jones figures coming out, so you'll want to check out that. And they were old school. The one I looked at was Marion, Sala, Tote,
nice.
Belloc, and Indy, and the Ark itself. So
yeah, I
they're
think
6-inch figures, and it should be pretty cool.
That's cool, and I think they emulate the original ones from 1980. The same card backs and all that sort of stuff. much like Star Wars has been doing at the Star Wars Fest that we went to. I bought a Boba Fett action figure from the Book of Boba Fett, but it's designed all logo, looks just like the old action figures, and it's the first action figure I bought and haven't opened because I just enjoy the presentation so much.
Yeah, I have a few of those. I'm thinking about busting them. I have an old like McFarlane Toys Mackenzie Brothers set.
Oh, that's
and now the box is yellowing, and so you can't even really enjoy it. I just take them out of there and set them up somewhere.
I know. Just the fact that there are Mackenzie brother toys that you can display, you got to give them a little air.
Yeah. And then, of course, Googling Harrison Ford news always gets us something interesting, but nothing from Daily Mail this time. I don't know if Ford's stayed indoors this week, but there's a fun story out there about Harrison Ford giving grief to a guy running a marathon in an Indiana Jones outfit. Well, it turns out the guy's running these marathons to raise money because his son has muscular dystrophy. Oh. So Ford was giving him a gentle ribbing about how he looked. So he now is going to run as Chewbacca. Things. And no surprise,
that's a way hotter thing.
That's what he said. He said, "I'm doing this for my kid." He was not, because he looked all sweaty and like a mess. I think that's why Ford goofed on him. But he knew the guy. He wasn't just goofing on some stranger. Why does he know the guy, Adam? Because he's in England and Ford was shooting there, and the guy runs a bike shop, and that's what we know. That's how you meet Harrison Ford. We found out.
Paul, I think we need to start a bike shop.
Yeah.
Bring him in.
That was fun to hear about. That and one more quick recurring show segment before we get to the recap.
This date in Ford history.
History.
October 3rd, 2017, Blade Runner 2049 opens. Not a summer movie for him, and not really a summer movie. This is a good time to be releasing a Blade Runner 2049. So that's cool. We're doing it virtually on the anniversary. No, we are doing it on the anniversary. Blade Runner 2049.
Actually, all three of these news stories took place on October 3rd in their various years.
Oh,
I was just thinking, because I was looking up a lot of stuff on Blade Runner. Obviously, 2049 comes up sometimes when you search.
Yeah.
Even just a still of that movie in a thumbnail is breathtaking.
It's amazing.
Roger Deakins outdid himself. He was like, enough. Give me an Oscar already. That film looks fantastic.
And you just think of the risk of creating a legacy sequel and destroying something about the original. And I came to this realization when I saw E.T. in Washington, D.C. with a live orchestra. That was just like watching E.T. for the first time. And it occurred to me, as such a big fan of sequels and prequels and more, and give me 2,500 Marvel movies a year, all that sort of stuff. I was like, this movie is better because they never made a sequel. We could go, oh, you can ignore it. It doesn't hurt the original. But aren't you so happy there's no sequel to E.T.?
Yes.
So, Blade Runner, obviously a masterpiece on a whole different level, but you just wouldn't want to try and re-emulate it. And the fact that they did, and they captured the same atmosphere, and it looks maybe even better, I was like, wow, okay. Right on. I mean, what a dream come true,
Yeah, some of the shots in that are absolutely jaw-dropping. So, yeah, and I saw it in the theater, and I feel bad for anyone who didn't. I kind of want to put a film fest together someday here where it's just stuff you should have seen in the theater. Yeah, that's what I'll call it. The stuff you should have seen in the theater film festival. Here's your chance again. Avatar was going to be in that, but now it's re-released, obviously. Getting prepped for the sequel, but you should go see that. But, Ant-Man, you should see that in the theater. Blade Runner 2049 should be seen in the theater. So put a whole film fest of those together. Great Man should, that would be even better.
It's true.
Film festival of stuff that should have been seen in the first place, should have got their time in the theater.
What streaming movies need a theatrical release?
Yeah, that entire Rings of Power.
Oh, right. October 3rd, 1987, 30 years before Blade Runner 2017, Malcolm Ford is born on the release date, ultimately, of Blade Runner 2049. I guess it's his second son, right?
I don't want to say he's the Eric Trump of the Ford family, but I certainly know a lot more about Ben, and we talked all about that last week.
Well, I was also thinking about Ben because we mentioned I listened to our show, and I was like, after what movie, did Harrison Ford and his wife at the time conceive? Because we were like the reason his parents probably couldn't make it out to see, Journey to Shiloh, I can't remember what it was because they had a newborn baby. But it's like, oh, was it after Dead Heat on the Merry-Go-Round? They're like, congratulations, honey, let's go have a kid. Like, I have a career now.
Yeah, that's right.
What movie is each baby's conception?
Paging Mr. Ellis is going to shoot me into a different money bracket. Let's do this. So Malcolm Ford comes out in 87, so they probably conceived, in 86 or earlier in 87. Either way, there's a little break in there. 87
make him a witness
Harrison
baby?
Ford movie. It's because then Mosquito Coast 86, then Frantic and Working Girl are both 88, so he took a year off and had a kid.
Yeah. And then on October 3rd, 1999, Random Hearts, this is one of the ones that I've never seen, is released. 99. So that's in Chicago. You're in Chicago still at that point, and we didn't go see this Harrison Ford movie together.
Actually, I'm not. I just exited Chicago and started working on a cruise ship. I saw Random Hearts in the Bahamas.
Oh, my God.
With
Wow.
Fight Club and a bunch of other sort of late 99 stuff for the first time.
That's
That was
fantastic.
pretty cool. Had to leave the cruise ship, get on a little local bus, and take it out to the middle of nowhere to a mall and go see a movie, well away from the tourist area. So you were hitting local life in the Bahamas, but had to. Movies. So, yeah. Random Hearts is one of the ones I saw there.
Oh, nothing can keep Paul away from movies. It was the funniest thing to see, as for the first time in history, movies weren't shown in America. Paul was seeing movies. We all shut down, shut a whole quarantine. You go to movie theaters and you'd see the marquees frozen in time. Paul's out there finding movies.
Pandemic, right? Yeah, I went to Oceanside
pandemic.
to watch Tenet. I went to Utah to see Bill and Ted's Face the Music. Now, granted, I was coming back from Wyoming, but I was like, wait, before we get to California, they're showing movies in Utah. California was still shut down.
Yeah.
So I saw Bill and Ted Face the Music pretty much with one other guy in the theater, but it was just so big again. I was like, movie. So.
Yeah, you find movies, dude. You are the movie guy. By the way, John McTiernan was charged in federal court with making false statement to an FBI investigator in February 2006 about his hiring of the private investigator Anthony Pellicano. That's a name you heard in the news a lot at that time. Pellicano. All these people that were hiring Pellicano. Pellicano, we illegally wiretap producer Charles Roven, the producer of the film Rollerball, around August 2000. The whole thing is over him trying to find out what the producer of the remake of Rollerball was thinking and saying in his office privately. That's just so funny that it all centers around that.
Well, Adam, there were making of struggles and different versions and all that, but let's get back to the point. What is Blade Runner all about? We'll tell you with our patented Movie Guys recap.
A fiery LA skyline, a close-up of an eyeball, a futuristic building. The opening shots of Blade Runner tell you everything you know about the murky future in which they take place. 2019?
2019. Oh, will this movie cover the first Trump impeachment and the U.S.-China trade war?
Well, it does cover illegal immigration, as Harrison Ford, now comfortably in the position he'll be best at from here on out, leading man, plays a former police officer who has to enforce President Trump's dream policy of killing the immigrants.
Enhance.
Oh, and Trump isn't president. And I should also mention that the immigrants are bioengineered humanoids known as replicants, who are supposed to be working off-planet.
But several of them have escaped and made their way back to Earth due to an open border between us and all of space. The replicants, Zora, Pris, Leon, and their leader, Roy Batty, are the most advanced replicants ever created. Superior strength, agility, brains, eyes, and on top of that, they are identical to humans, or in the words of their creator, more human than human. Roy Batty is their leader because he apparently is so advanced, he has a last name.
And that last name. They're dangerous. They've escaped to Earth, they're out in society, and only one man can find them and kill them. And that's exactly what this movie's about. Harrison Ford plays Rick Deckard. God, that's a great name. Ugh. Han Solo, Indiana Jones, and Rick Deckard.
Deckard. Yeah, you're right. It is good to say. Deckard is a legendary Blade Runner.
That was my profession. Ex-cop. Ex-Blade Runner. Ex-killer.
Is he the best of the best? Yes. Is he out of the life? Yes. Then do we have ourselves a movie? Yes.
Deckard sniffs out replicants with the talent that Harrison Ford also employs on audience members, making us look deeply into his eyes. But in this test, eye responses in the person taking the test are measured to see if they are a replicant or not. It goes by the friendly name of the Voigtkampf test.
Yes, in the Voigtkampf test, you are given a series of questions.
You see a clown who's wearing Depends.
You're staying at a Fort Wayne, Indiana Holiday Inn for a conference on bowling ball lacquer.
You're watching the episode of Kung Fu with Dennis Hopper.
You're babysitting and someone keeps calling to ask if you've checked the children.
Your rental car for the trip to Chain of Lakes is neither young nor glamorous.
And Harrison Ford is still breaking ground as one of his movies finally stars M. Emmett Walsh, who plays Well, does M. Emmett Walsh play anybody? In fact, this movie is a bit of a chef's salad of character actors, as M. Emmett Walsh tells Deckard about Brian James killing another Blade Runner during a Voight Kampf test!
Monsieur!
Anyway, he gives him the assignment to track down 4 Nexus 6 replicants and kill them. The Nexus 6 are the Tesla of replicants. Fast, sleek, invented by a maniac, and like Elon Musk, indistinguishable from a real personality.
Deckard pays a visit to the inventor of the Nexus 6, Eldon Tyrell of the Tyrell Corporation. Deckard visits Tyrell the way he visits everyone in this movie. Slowly. And traveling by futuristic flying car, the Spinner, designed by Sid Mead and painstakingly shot by the recently deceased FX giant Douglas Trumbull. If you shot something as beautiful as the exteriors of 2019 Los Angeles in this movie, you'd be hesitant to cut away too.
Especially when those hypnotic, slow flybys are scored by Vangelis, the recently minted Oscar winner for Chariots of Fire, a piece of music that instantly conjures images of Clark Griswold and his family running to Wally World. I've never seen Chariots of Fire, and I don't plan to.
Tyrell lives in a gigantic futuristic pyramid, a Douglas Trumbull shot that is so good, it's worshipped as a sacred text in some corners of the world. Tyrell the futurist, the technologist, lives by natural light in an Egyptian-themed castle as the symbolism piles up like a Ridley Scott movie. Tyrell also has Coke bottle glasses. We'll get into the symbolism of eyes later. Let's just say that perception is reality, and Ridley Scott's a little more European than George Lucas.
Which raises the question, what is reality? We're introduced to Rachel, Tyrell's beautiful secretary, played by Seong Young of almost Raiders of the Lost Ark with Tom Selleck. Tyrell has brought Deckard, the best of the best at spotting replicants, to test him on a human subject. Deckard administers the Voight Kampf test.
You're trying to explain the end of 2001 to an 8-week-old puppy.
You finish mowing the lawn only to realize it's Art Garfunkel's lawn.
You're in 1963 Greenwich Village. You're on in 5, but you forgot your ukulele.
You're writing a parody of I'm Too Sexy with Weird Al Yankovic.
You're cast as Vicky Vale in Batman when you break your arm while training for the sequence where Vicky Vale rides a horse.
You're the new head of Warner Brothers and you think Batgirl sucks.
Deckard discovers that Rachel isn't human, and also that she doesn't know. It's the latest advancement by Tyrell, replicants with the advanced moral quandary 6000 engine, that think they are human and look like Sean Young and have memories.
It's sci-fi written by Nietzsche, because if our lives are just memories, and memories can be implanted, then what is the difference between us and them? And if they're basically human, then how can you kill them?
What the hell was happening to me?
It's the exact same question that Raiders of the Lost Ark doesn't raise.
And if you think a meditation on what makes humans humans would make for a slow sci-fi movie, you'd be right. But you don't go to the Sistine Chapel for the pizza. Ridley Scott's signature painstaking visual precision has never been more on display, because he's young, he's hungry, and he hasn't had 10 years taken off his life by making Blade Runner yet.
But quicker than a studio executive can say, Ridley, what the hell am I looking at here? He plays 3 notes on a piano and summons a unicorn? It's time to do what they signed up for, detective cop stuff. Deckard searches the apartment of Leon, a replicant who killed a Blade Runner, and finds photos and, in the bathroom, a reptilian scale.
Enhance.
And then, after the exhilarating searching scene, Blade Runner slows it down a bit to
Enhance.
Deckard's detective credibility. Deckard views the photograph in a futuristic, but also not, piece of tech which allows you to infinitely
Enhance.
a photograph. And once you
Enhance.
this one, the replicant Zora can be seen in the background. Zora is a pleasure model, which means she helps men
Enhance.
their pleasure.
Deckard finds Zora in a district that looked like a nightmare to shoot. How many extras, Ridley? I'm thinking 20? How about 600? And rain. Lots of rain on all those extras. Well, being a master detective, Deckard is also a master of disguise, pretending to be an agent to get close to her, ultimately shooting her down in the street. Ridley, can we just shoot her in the dressing room? I was thinking out on the rainy street with 600 extras in the rain, but maybe she runs through 6 panes of glass first, a winter-themed shop window, so maybe it's snowing too. Anyway, he shoots her in the back.
While Deckard tracks down the 4 replicants, they're on the loose. Roy Batty, played incomparably by the already incomparable Rutger Hauer, and Leon are trying to get to Tyrell to turn off their limited lifespan as the clock is ticking and Batty wants...
I want more life, fucker.
Hey, language.
I want more life, father.
They visit David Lopan from Big Trouble in Little China, creator of Their Eyes. There's that metaphor again. Adam, did you ever think that perception is reality? Pris, meanwhile, locates the robot inventor and geneticist J.R. Sebastian, played by William Sanderson.
Hi, I'm Larry. This is my brother Daryl. This is my other brother Daryl.
The rich man's Tracy Walter. Pris's advanced replicant powers give her 10 times the sexiness of a regular human Daryl Hannah. She manipulates Sebastian to gain his trust and entrance to his apartment full of creepy toys.
Okay, yep. Room full of nightmares. Not going in there.
Deckard has a difficult heart-to-heart telling Rachel that she's not human, and that he's attracted to robots. It's the 80s, so he forces himself on her, but ultimately it isn't a stretch to think that she's attracted to Harrison Ford. Later, following her into the street, he runs into the replicant Leon and gets his ass kicked by the Terminator-like strength and speed of the killer droid.
He's ultimately saved by Rachel, who kills Leon with Deckard's gun. So the question of, is killing a replicant killing a human, gets a new layer to ponder while high at midnight at the Village North in Chicago. Also, what if the color blue to him isn't the color blue to her? Anyway, Rachel and Deckard tend to each other's wounds and then each other's lips.
Roy Batty uses J.R. Sebastian to gain access to Tyrell, who cannot give him more life. Sorry, life is death. And so Batty takes Tyrell's life from him. It's murdering by metaphor as Batty sticks his thumb into Tyrell's eyes further and further until he dies.
Meanwhile, Deckard has followed Pris to Sebastian's apartment where he gets beat up some more. But he finds the courage to kill a replicant and takes Pris down with another iconic Harrison Ford prop.
Then it's finally down to Deckard and Batty. Batty is the superior and more vicious fighter. Deckard is outmatched and even robbed of his pistol hand when Batty slowly and methodically breaks 3 of Deckard's fingers and then puts the gun back in his hand, which is a pretty boss villain move.
But Batty's time on Earth is ticking down. He's dying, and being a Nexus 6, he has advanced powers of contemplation as he winds down with one of the great death scenes in cinema history, and a speech that was entirely improvised. No, I'm totally kidding. I hate when people say that.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the 10-house gate. All those moments will be lost in time. Like tears in rain.
But how that didn't become an Eric Clapton song, I'll never know. And so closes Blade Runner, but depending on what version you see, either Rachel and Deckard take a sunlight stroll through the woods that looks a lot like the opening helicopter shots of The Shining.
I didn't know how long we'd have together. Who does?
Or Rachel and Deckard leave his apartment together after finding an origami unicorn left by Gaff, and a vocal flashback of Gaff saying it's too bad she won't live, but who does, which many seem to think means that the producer saw this and said, "You're killing me, Ridley, what is this?" But to the rest of us in the back of the Princess Theaters 4 with Dave Whitehouse, it meant that Deckard himself might be a replicant.
All of us might be replicants. What is life? What is reality? How can podcasts be neither? I mean, I can't know.
Where do I come from? Where am I going? How long have I got?
And so the movie ends, never answering the question of whether androids dream of electric sheep.
All right, and that's Blade Runner. Now, we'll recap Blade Runner, the work print.
No.
Oh, okay, all right, we're done. That's it. We're done, everybody. Blade Runner. That's Blade Runner. And now, our thoughts. We are joined by a longtime friend of the Movie Guys who appeared on the Movie Guys Live, the old Toad Hop Network show. Came down to Hollywood and appeared on that show. The Movie Showcast in my garage. He appeared in there, I do believe, if I'm not mistaken. Did he do a Movie Guys Live show? One of our live shows?
I was at the original,
I can't remember.
I believe. I was there with Farley.
I remember that for sure. Now he's on the Ford Fiesta. Apparently we got to get him on Movie Nonsense so he can complete all of our shows and be on all of them. Dave Sachs is here.
Hey,
Dave Sachs
is here.
When I think of Blade Runner, I think of one person who absolutely adores Blade Runner. We have had some amazing Blade Runner conversations over the years. You know, you have certain people that you could talk certain movies with, and there was only one choice to come on.
Well, I am honored. This is great. I got to tell you, it is my favorite movie of all time, so I'm certainly excited to dive into this.
And it's 40 years old this year. 1982 it came out.
Oh, yeah, 82.
Crazy.
You would never know it to look at it. That movie, I'm telling you, you could take an 18-year-old right now and plop them into a movie theater and tell them that this movie was just released. And with the very few exceptions of a few models or cars or whatever, for the most part, looks like it just was released. It's fabulous. It's so great.
Yeah, and it was released June 25th in 1,290 theaters. That's 1982. And Alan Ladd Jr. thought this was a lucky day because Star Wars was released on a 25th, May 25th in 1977, and Alien was released on a 25th, May 25th in 1979. So they thought June 25th, that's when this is coming out. And of course, it was not a huge hit. Not the lucky day he thought he was going to get.
I mean, I wonder if people were expecting another Star Wars. It is sci-fi. It is Harrison Ford. It can't help but be disappointing to somebody coming in the first time. We're watching this for the 20th, 30th, 40th time.
And there's a lot that they gave us because not only did we get the theatrical cut in 1982, but we got the director's cut in 1992, and we got the final cut in 2007. Ironically, the final cut is the only one where director Ridley Scott, retained artistic control. Not on the director's cut, but on the final cut. So how many times do you think you've seen this, Dave? Like with Raiders of the Lost Ark, I've seen it at least 40 times because I see it every year and it's been out 41 years. So what do you think?
Yeah, it's probably close to 20 or more. I don't know. It could be 24. Yeah, it's one of them that goes back. I saw it pretty shortly after it was released, at least for home viewing, because it was, must have been 1983 or 84 or something like that I saw it over at a friend's house. I was completely blown away. So I'd never seen anything like it. I was a young kid and I saw Star Wars, right? Of course.
Right.
And I'd seen some sci-fi, but nothing with this kind of atmospherics, nothing that was this immersive. And I just thought it was the greatest. I had already liked sci-fi, but I was so mesmerized by it. I thought it was such a great concept and great execution of a great concept.
I mean, nothing has ever done anything. I mean, this movie is insane. Okay. I mean, every single shot has 100 layers of people and rain and neon lights. And I mean, it's just like, and I was calling it out while we were watching it a couple times. I'm like, hey, Ridley, you just want to like 2 cars and stuff? Oh yeah, 2 cars. Can I get like 150 extras? And then let's get to a couple planes of neon lights. How many? I'm thinking 60. I don't know. What do you guys think? Like everything is just like so thick. It's such a dense movie.
Yeah.
Well, as beautiful it was to look at. $30 million budget. Now that's 1982 numbers, but still $30 million is so it was well spent wherever the money went.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's way up there though, right? 82. That
Sure.
ain't even Empire Strikes Back, I thought went over budget at like 17 or something,
Here's what they thought was going to lure you in. The taglines. The star of Raiders of the Lost Ark and the director of Alien take you on a spectacular journey to the savage world of the year 2019.
I had recently shown this to my nephew and my niece, and when it starts out with Los Angeles 2019, they laughed out loud. It really is.
Because it's just like hellscape.
Yeah. The dystopian future that happened a few years ago.
Man has made his match. Now it's his problem, is your other tagline.
Oh my God.
I like that.
But I think I've had the pleasure to see this mostly in theaters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I went to the director's cut. I went to the final cut. I went to the final cut twice. And I think I might have seen the original in the theater. I think my brother took me, when I was very young.
No way. You saw this in the theater? That was
think
totally
so, yeah.
not allowed.
I was so high on Raiders, I didn't care what Harrison Ford did next.
That's the thing. I'm begging my parents to go see this Blade Runner. They're like, no, you can't go see that. That's an adult movie. It was such a... that annoyed me so much. I was so mad.
Maybe it was my dad, but I think I did see it in the theater. So I think I'm like 3 times in the theater, only like twice at home viewing. So I'm lucking out to having a lot of theatrical experiences.
Dave, did you see it in the theater? Did you say that?
Only as a re-release, when they came out with it again, as Paul was describing. No, it completely escaped me. When I was a kid, I wasn't too plugged into what the new releases were, things like that, unless it was something I really knew about. But this one, I don't even remember ever seeing a preview for it or knowing anything about it.
Harrison Ford, he's a space cop. I mean, I'm like, I'm in, but my parents are like, no way, you can't. No, you're not going to see Blade Runner. That's not.
But that tagline that Paul said, that gives maybe a little bit of an indication to why it might not have done well in the box office. I mean, they're setting it up that it's Raiders of the Lost Ark guy, and this isn't Raiders of the Lost Ark guy. I mean, this is deep, drunk Humphrey Bogart, in film noir, stuck in that world.
It's for adults, but not necessarily in the way you think. It's for adults because adults can get into this sort of noir. I mean, yeah, there's boobs in it too, but it really is like an adult adventure in that it's really a throwback.
So is it a risk for Ford? I mean, we're just getting into his lead actor status. He had been ensemble in Star Wars. He had been the lead in Hanover Street, but who's talking about that? So he comes out of Raiders, the big lead. He's the man. And now he doesn't follow it up with the same thing.
Well, I think that's why people expected a big action movie. It's sci-fi. They're expecting Star Wars. It's, Harrison Ford as space cop. So they're expecting some Indiana Jones, and they don't get any of that. I mean, what a thoroughly disappointing movie from the point of view of everybody going to the theaters to see this for some reason.
Sure.
Like, all the reasons to love this movie are not there on day one in 1982. I'll tell you that, right? I mean, come on. Like, there's nobody went in going, God, I hope this is a futuristic noir.
Dystopian.
Dystopian noir. God, I hope this is a dystopian noir.
I hope I see Han Solo as a bummed out, drunken, washed out.
Yeah.
Detective.
Those classic characters, the classic washed up guy who can't do the job as a detective anymore and he's burned out. That, but in the future. Oh, no. Not the future you're thinking of. A really bummer of a future.
Oh my God. You remember how Heat was advertised in the theater? I remember there were people that were disappointed with Heat because the trailer for it, at least the initial one, made it seem like it was more, maybe not Die Hard, but it had a lot more action, right? It's Kilmer, it's a Pacino, it's De Niro, and oh my God, look, they're shooting, there's bank robberies and everything. So people went into that thinking that was what that was, and it was this pensive, deep drama. And I think it just threw people for such a loop that they just couldn't get themselves out of the one mindset and into the one that the movie really needed. And maybe Blade Runner was sort of similar in that regard. I mean, if they're billing it as, I know they had to say it, but the guy from Raiders of the Lost Ark, but it really is such a departure for him.
I think Michael Mann takes more perverse joy in disappointing an audience than Ridley. I think Ridley, the sad thing about Ridley is he always thinks like, oh, this is the one. Like they're going to go, when they see Legend, they're going to go nuts. And then they don't. And you're like, oh man. And he pours everything into, he worked a couple 12-hour days. You could tell.
I got the Top Gun guy in Legend and everything still. But here's who was in consideration to play Deckard. By the way, fun fact, never called Rick.
Oh.
The whole movie.
That's cool. That's so noir. It's all noir, man. It's like every little thing.
Well, listen, you got the femme fatale. You've got the questionable morals of your lead. You've got the narration, the dark photography. Yeah, it's all, the checklist has been checked.
Yeah. And then, of course, like when you get to his apartment and stuff, you're like, Venetian blinds everywhere, like it's got all the noir stuff.
Yeah.
So potentially Rick Deckard could have been Gene Hackman, Sean Connery, Jack Nicholson, Paul Newman, Clint Eastwood. These were all considered. Tommy Lee Jones, Schwarzenegger.
Everybody puts in a bid at first, right?
Yeah, but that would have been pre-Terminator.
Oh, that would have been.
So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Peter Falk.
All right. You know what?
That's actually the first one you've said that makes sense based on the
Because
genre.
he's detective. Yeah.
You loved him in Columbo. Yeah.
Now you're saying that your daughter, your niece is represented right now.
What kind of nexus did you say? It's all goobly-goop to me.
I tell you, if you could see the things that I see with your eyes, you'd see that you left a origami behind, if I'm not mistaken. There, sir.
Pacino, Burt Reynolds.
Oh, 82 Burt Reynolds?
That might have worked.
Yeah,
Sharky's Machine, it's around that time.
But
Can you imagine Ridley Scott seeing eye to eye with Burt Reynolds on anything?
Yeah, good call. But the two that went furthest, Dustin Hoffman went the furthest in the talks, and they broke down.
Really?
And Martin Sheen turned it down. I guess if you need narration, you go with the best.
Yeah, right.
So,
Oh.
You know,
Which,
a
of
lot
course,
of
it was
those I would have loved to
narration,
see. I would have loved to see. I mean, maybe not the Peter Falk, but, you know, still. I think everybody could have done an interesting
I'd
job
watch
with that.
Straight Times Dustin Hoffman in this.
Yeah. That all sounds good. Paul Newman.
a few years before Color of Money, so he'd be a little haggard, you know, the haggard cop that you need him to
82,
be.
isn't that Slapshot year, Paul Newman?
Yeah, it's near The Verdict, too, right? Wasn't he was sort of the washed out
Oh,
lawyer
yeah, that
in
was
The
like
Verdict,
81,
so.
I believe, yeah.
Yeah, so.
You're getting
He was
absence
gritty.
of malice, The Verdict, Paul Newman, yeah. Yeah, I guess in the original film, too, he doesn't really, Rick Deckard doesn't really speak. We're talking about Deckard here for a second. Doesn't even speak for the last 20 minutes of the movie. Now, I watched today to see if the final cut, that's obviously changed. He comes back, he talks to Rachel a bunch. But the biggest fact that, Dave, you may have the floor, is that Harrison Ford has said he's a detective who doesn't do any detecting.
That's right.
Fact or fiction?
Dave, you have the floor.
Yeah. So that is the quote that I have heard that Harrison Ford. Now, a little bit of background is it sounded like he had a terrible experience on this movie.
Yeah.
So and a lot of people did. This was one of those movies that I think it was just a tough birth. You know, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And
I think only a bad time could be had on this set.
Yeah. And yet, for it to come out as beautiful as it did. But yes, he did seem to say.
Well, that's why everyone had to have had a terrible time on this set. Everything is so fussed with that no frame doesn't have 150 things. How many dolls would you like in JF Sebastian's place?
Yeah.
I'm thinking 120. What do you guys think? We were thinking 12. You know, like when Pris fell into the garbage, I was like, that is the most fussed with garbage in Hollywood history. Like Ridley must have spent hours like put this here, put that.
Yeah, it is his most Kubrick. I think, like we were saying. I mean, it is just so meticulous in every detail, and that aspect obviously it must have driven some people crazy. But for Harrison Ford afterwards, I guess the quote that I had heard him say was that it's a detective movie where the lead doesn't do any detecting. And, you know, that has always frustrated me because I can appreciate if he doesn't like the movie. Maybe he's never seen it. You know, there are actors that don't go back and watch their own work. That's okay. He's allowed to not like the work he was involved in. But the problem is he's wrong. And I hate that part. I would love to be able to sit down next to Harrison Ford and say to him, look, brother, if this is the only reason, if this is the reason you don't like this movie, I got great news for you. You're going to love this movie because Rick Deckard does a huge amount of detecting in this movie. He starts out as, you know, he doesn't want to do it. He gets pulled in by Bryant, but then they go and they review the tape when Holden gets shot. Then he goes to Leon's apartment, or it goes to Terrell.
Right.
Then he goes to Leon's apartment. He gets the thing out. He puts it in his evidence bag, which I don't have one of those.
Literally an evidence bag.
Literally an evidence bag that he carries with him. The only people I know that carry evidence bags are detectives. But so, you know, and the photograph, and he follows up on this, and really, it is a plot motivation. It's maybe not the greatest detective movie of all time, but, you know, it's like Adam and I were talking about. I don't think it's trying to be the greatest detective movie of all time, but it is a solid detective movie. I mean, it moves forward one step to the next through his detecting, and then as a result of where he's going, then other things unfold, and we learn more about him.
I think the writers were interested in a detective movie. I think certain members of the crew were interested in a detective movie, but Ridley Scott was not. I mean, that was in the script. and he was shooting the script, and that's it for Ridley caring about that, because it's just a pure, every frame is an absolute masterpiece.
It's very deep in the sense that I think that the underlying discussion of this is, what does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be human or not? Or what does it mean to be to owe life, to be able to deserve to live and explore life? And so that part of it, I'm sure, put the hook in Ridley, right? That sounds more like his vibe.
Absolutely.
And so I think he brought out, and thank goodness he did, that he emphasized that side of it, because that is what makes this movie. If you were to pull that out, if you were to extricate out the idea of the sort of the underlying philosophy of it, you wouldn't have a very good movie. You would have a guy who just kind of goes from one thing to another, and then he sort of solves a case, but he doesn't, because
it can't ride on being a detective movie. It just so thick with theme. I mean, it's so thick with theme that at the end he saves Deckard's life with a hand with a hand with a nail in it, and then dies and lets a dove go. It's like, is that enough symbolism, Ridley? No, put an entire factory behind him. Can we get an entire factory behind him?
So it's him at his most Kubrick and his most Bergman.
With a little bit of John Woo Dove in there.
There you go, John Woo Dove.
Well, let's go back to the source of this story then, because it's based on the novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. And Scorsese was interested in the film, but he never optioned it. The story was first optioned by Herb Jaffe, and his son did an adaptation. So Philip Dick flew to meet Herb and said, just getting off the plane, shall I beat you up here at the airport, or shall I beat you up back at my apartment? So, clearly unhappy with the translation from book to script. And he also had problems with Hampton Fancher's adaptation.
This is Philip Dick you're talking about,
Philip
right?
Dick.
PKD.
Yeah. PKD. And he was concerned people weren't communicating with him about the production, as well as writers, I would imagine, do. The thing gets away from him, they don't hear from anybody a while. But he eventually seemed to enjoy David Webb Peoples' version of the script, because Fancher and Peoples were both listed as screenwriters, but one kind of started, Fancher, Peoples took over. Fancher came in again later and added some more stuff. PKD saw a 20-minute VFX reel from the studio and said, quote, "It was my own interior world. They caught it perfectly." And then again, he died before the film was realized. But he still said he's not going to do a novelization, because they asked him. And he's like, there's already a book.
That's so absurd.
That takes balls to ask him that question. Are you going to do a novelization? It's based on my story.
What a perfect way to admit that we didn't really adapt a lot of your book. Yeah. Would you like to write an adaptation of the movie based on your book? Because we screwed it.
Yeah, right.
But then this led to a whole series of films based on his work that he never got to see, unfortunately. Total Recall was based on We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, Minority Report, The Adjustment Bureau, A Scanner Darkly, and then Next.
Weekend at Bernie's.
The great Next movie, and of course Paycheck, which is the greatest title in the history of movies, because clearly that's why the movie was made.
Now, based on the name of the movie Paycheck, I guarantee that was offered to Burt Reynolds at some point. Doesn't that sound like a Burt Reynolds movie?
It does sound like a Burt Reynolds movie.
And the other thing interesting about Philip K. Dick is when I saw his name today, I'm on the other side now of having seen and interviewed the director of a movie called A Glitch in the Matrix, a documentary that came out recently that explores, are we in fact in a matrix in real life? And this whole theory was first posited by Philip K. Dick.
Yeah, for sure. Very influential in that sense. I mean, I know a lot of, not just the movies that were made on his work, but I know a lot of other people cited him as being a real influence.
Yeah. And Ridley Scott came aboard and I didn't know this, when he abandoned a slow-moving production of Dune that never got going.
How about that?
How many people almost directed Dune?
And then he talked about the relationship. Let me do a quote here from Ford. Blade Runner is not one of my favorite films. I tangled with Ridley. And he disliked the voiceovers. He said he disliked doing them for the people that did not represent the director's interests. I was obliged to work for these clowns that came in writing one bad voiceover after another.
Oh, God. Yes, that had to be just punch-up writers or whoever.
Okay, so a work print was made. When you make a film, you make a work print that's not completed, but it's shown to people, and so they showed it to people in a couple places, got feedback that the producers didn't care for. So the producers at this point already had fired Ridley Scott and the film's producer for coming in over budget. So then they were obliged to do whatever they wanted to do with the movie. That's when they added the voiceover and the happy ending and eliminated some scenes that later were brought back into the film.
So completely without Ridley, that just,
Yeah.
They no longer had to argue over, because he wins a lot of fights. You could tell.
Yeah.
You can tell a movie like this. Nothing. I've said this before on some movies that are overly lush like this. Like nothing in this movie was the producer's first choice.
Yeah. So everybody's George Lucas is what I'm saying. The work print eventually was released as the director's cut, but Ridley didn't approve of it. So that's not the director's cut. And so then Scott came in and did put his final stamp on it, and what we have the final cut in 2007. So that's the journey to what we have now, which is what we watched tonight. The other ones I think are interesting to watch just for historical perspective. It's like, oh, that is what it was like when I first saw it. Oh, and here's how the special effects look when they're not sort of cleaned up. And
but I will say this, I read a quote by Christopher Nolan, who said that he has watched this movie hundreds of times, and it was a huge influence on him. That's not a terrible surprise, right? I mean, you can certainly see some influence there, but he believes that the voiceover, the original director's cut, is the definitive Blade Runner. So from his perspective, he doesn't think it detracts that much. He thinks it adds to the story, and it's kind of the original. Now it sounds like it was also the one he fell in love with, so there might be some of that. It's kind of the first version of a song you hear, and then you hear another version. But for whatever it's worth, Christopher Nolan believes it's the definitive.
Without the voiceover, it doesn't feel, no matter how much detecting he does, it doesn't feel as much like a detective movie, because that was a trope. And this hits all the tropes of noir, but very obliquely. Like Ridley's not going to give you anything on a platter. Like I even realized tonight that Vangelis' score sounds like that sort of saxophone that you would hear as they walk down the rainy street, always rainy in the noir. But Ridley doesn't want to gives that all very obliquely in the form of basically a European art film, an impenetrable, exercise in what is life. Most people are like, and then the ships go pew 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 pew, and Ridley goes, yeah, and then we ponder what life is.
Because what is love? What is life? Right?
Yeah.
The continuous.
But the voiceover is the detective one,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, from what I remember, his voice isn't, it's not as much, I ought to kill you right now. It's more, we're not going to Delhi, doll. We're going to Pankot Palace. So.
Good differentiation.
Yeah, and the latter is a little put on, I think. So I never, as much as I love Harrison Ford, I was never the hugest fan of that voiceover.
I think part of it too, though, is, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think Harrison Ford's heart probably just sank when he found out they were going to be doing this narration. He's going to do the voiceover, and he gets it, and he's reading it, and from his perspective, it's just, he doesn't think it's good. This guy, I know he tells the story that he showed up they were going to do some kind of audio work, a redub or something like that, and he was there, and he walked into the room where the guy was typing up the actual script, or the what the voiceover was going to be, and Harrison Ford said, "Oh, hi, I heard you're here, and I just want to introduce myself." And the guy just shooed him away and just said, "Go, leave. I only, I'm under a deadline or whatever." And Harrison's saying, "Well, this guy's completely disconnected to the process, right?" So whatever came out of that, I think it sort of shows. I think that the voiceover work that he does, not that he phones it in, but just that I think in this case, I don't think his heart was in it, and you can sort of hear that. It's enough of a disconnect that it shows, because his performance in this movie, I think, is some of the best acting of his career. I really love it. I think it's got a huge arc. We see this character go through a lot, and he shows it. He gives us that ride. But then, to tack on, it really feels very bolted on, I guess, now.
Because again, this is a totally shot like a European art film. Like it's a lot of symbolism. It's all beauty shots. It'd be the equivalent of taking Zabriskie Point or some sort of like art film like that, and then putting so then we walked down the road and then we didn't quite understand what was going on. You're like, what are you doing? This movie was not shot to support that.
Yeah, that's
because you watch the version we watched tonight, and it's like lots of silence and glances and looks, and and I love at the beginning when he kicks open the door to M. Emmett Walsh. M. Emmett Walsh sighting, also bonus points for this movie, right? You can't go wrong with a little M. Emmett Walsh. But he kicks that door open, and if I just heard him gibbering and jabbering for the last minute, and I forget when the voiceover is, but I think it's like before and during that scene, so I went down to the office to talk to the guy, and
Yeah.
But in this version, you get him quietly sitting on the street in that gorgeous, my new favorite shot, the one with him in front of the all the TVs. How many TVs you want, Ridley? I don't 10, 12? I'm thinking 60. It's just we're getting into this person just through looks and atmosphere and everything. And I have a feeling when I go back to the other one, it's gonna be like, so I was sitting there reading the paper, and then I got some Chinese food, and then this.
It's Frank Drebin, right? It's Police Squad. Well, I arrived at the apartment at 5:00 in the afternoon.
All right, so we need to drop some names here and give them some love. Production designer Lawrence G. Paul.
Oh God, yeah.
Because that place looks amazing.
Yeah.
He and I should also mention art designer Sid Mead.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Metropolis, Edward Hopper paintings, and a magazine called Metal Hurlant, which is...
I was a subscriber, but not everybody was. So, Paul, you should probably tell them what that is.
Just Dave knows, but for everybody else, it's heavy metal. It's the magazine Heavy Metal, but in France.
In France, yeah, it's in French, yeah.
Because of course that's what Ridley Scott, the French heavy metal, can't listen to.
He wasn't going to say Mad, even if it was Mad Magazine, he would have never said it. He had to,
Les Mad.
Some French, Les Mad.
Merde Magazine.
Les Upset.
Your cinematographer Jordan Cronenweth, and we looked him up during the film because we were like, I must have worked on this and that.
Right.
He shot a bunch of comedies and this.
Yeah.
He shot Best Friends with Burt Reynolds and Goldie Hawn. Is that what it's called?
God.
No, Just Friends. Best Friends. What is it?
And he shot The Best of Times with Robin Williams. And
Final Analysis with Richard Gere and Kim Basinger. Nothing big. And then in the middle of it all, we got,
we get this
Blade Runner.
gem.
This is crazy.
I mean, this is like the best photography of all time.
Yeah, it's great.
I'm just shocked he didn't continue to just shoot, Fellini films or something.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, in the original production with the happy ending, they're flying away from the city, and those shots were unused footage from The Shining, if you recall.
Right. I remember hearing that.
So Kubrick has a hand in this after all.
Kubrick still rears his head in there, for sure.
And the last person to mention, of course, rest in peace, Douglas Trumbull, special effects legend
Yeah.
who started in 2001. And then, of course, Encounters of the Third Kind, Star Trek The Motion Picture, right on through directing, Brainstorm, and Silent Running.
Adam pointed out that there's a shot, I mean, even right from the beginning, right, there's such a Douglas Trumbull shot where when you see one of these, these pod carriers or whatever they're called in the movie. The spinners, when they're flying around with that flare, the lens flare and everything. That's great.
That's a full-on Close Encounters lens flare.
Yeah.
It really is.
You were talking about why this movie was made, Adam, you were like, is this movie, he must have hated himself to make this movie. Well, it was kind of just the opposite. The history is that Ridley Scott made the film right after his brother died, and he liked the idea of exploring pain. So that's what launched him into this.
Wow.
And the film is dedicated to Philip Dick because he died as well. But I think if you look in there, there's also a dedication to Ridley's brother.
That's interesting. I wonder if that informed any of his, the kind of more religious choices, right? The what is the stigmata sort of sign, right? That Roy Batty when he drives the nail through his hand, and I wonder if Ridley Scott was just going through that kind of a thing too.
Yeah, because all that's such artsy stuff that happens,
Yeah.
And the meditations on what it is to be alive and what are memories and, all that stuff. It's like, at some point in the production process, somebody's got to go, hey, and maybe this should be about why are we alive? And that's got to be Ridley. That's just not going to be anybody else.
That's good.
So in the end, what is the movie's legacy? Well, nominated for 2 Oscars, Guess which ones?
Sound and sound editing.
Oh, no, actually, art direction and visual effects.
Oh, that's great.
Okay.
But yours are just as valid. That's the thing. They're going to be 2 tech things.
Yeah.
And they lost to Gandhi and E.T., respectively.
Oh, never heard of him. Gandhi, what did he ever do? He's no replicant. Come on.
Were there any meditations on what it's like to be alive in his movie?
Yeah, you see? Well, I guess it is. All right, I guess. All right, maybe Gandhi.
There was a Ridley Scott-esque number of extras, though. So, in Gandhi.
How many do you want? 20, 30? I'm thinking 8,000.
Yeah, 50,000.
93, it's selected into the U.S. National Film Registry by the Library of Congress for being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. The Visual Effects Society called it the second most visually influential film of all time, behind
Metropolis.
Star Wars.
Oh, Star Wars. Hey, good for them. All right. That is great, though. I did not know that they that it was so. I mean, I've obviously always highly regarded it, and so does everybody who sees it. You're just so struck by the visuals, but it's great to know that they got some love for it, too.
Harrison Ford, one visually interesting man.
That's right. He's even visually interesting.
Empire Magazine put it in the number 20 of the greatest movies of all time. The Guardians, it's the top sci-fi film on their list.
Right.
Time Magazine's top 100 all time. Yeah, so it didn't play big. It only earned $41.6 million after a $30 million budget, which is way less than Star Wars and Raiders. But due to VHS rentals, this was one of the first films to come out on DVD. A lot of people said maybe a close proximity to Star Trek II and The Thing and E.T. didn't help it because sci-fi was kind of overwhelming already that summer.
Oh yeah, but this is sci-fi summer. This is the most famous aftermath of Star Wars because you got Star Trek, Blade Runner, E.T., Tron.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really an interesting question. I'm sure there are people that have speculated on why it is that it didn't do particularly well in the box office, but I'm not surprised at all to find out that years later that it's been appreciated in that sense. I think, the more time that goes by, too, the more that there's that overwhelming sense of, my God, you just don't ever see a movie that doesn't get dated. I mean, that movie,
right.
40 years old, 40? Is that really possible? I mean, it just doesn't seem right because it's so visually stunning and the use of models.
Well, to think about it, if you watched Blade Runner, then you said, hey, let's watch a movie from 40 years ago. It'd be some 1942 sci-fi movie with guys in costumes in a moon set.
That's a great point. That's a great point when you put it like that.
Of course, we have the Vangelis score, and the interesting fact, after the movie came out, the soundtrack didn't arrive for like 12 years. It just never came out. There were delays, and then there were bootlegs, so they never put out the official. And finally, like in 2007, when the final cut came out, they put out a 3-CD compilation with the original soundtrack, unreleased tracks, and brand new music inspired by the movie by Vangelis. Smoking and playing. I don't know if you've ever seen his Chariots of Fire video. The guy smokes like crazy. It's hilarious. But anyway.
But what a dedicated mismanagement of the talent. He had won an Oscar for Chariots of Fire. We got Vangelis. Did that have an album? Or maybe there was no musical component to that in terms of making money. It just won an Oscar for it. But why wouldn't you go, Vangelis, we got the guy that everybody's been humming the theme to for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And here's the album. Here's Vangelis, the guy that everybody's been talking about for Chariots of Fire. I mean, really?
It's literally the year before.
Do a soundtrack for 18 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess because you can't tap your foot to it in the same way that that you can to that Chariots of Fire song. I mean, damn, that's catchy. The reality is that it's music as atmosphere also, right? It's not just music meaning, here, I'm going to fill it with notes.
Yes.
It's tones, right? It's chords. Sometimes it seems, they're just sort of out of place. And then he uses, sometimes it's Asian music, sometimes it's sort of futuristic, sometimes to your point, it's jazzy, new age or whatever. I mean, the guy it's incredible.
But all done with the futuristic instrumentation so that you feel like you're in the future.
Yeah.
But again, a movie that defies you to like it. If you're going in for a Star Wars feel, this ain't John Williams.
Right.
And, I often, would criticize movies for having sort of more asynchronic scores rather than have like a classic John Williams hummable tap your feet to it.
Yeah.
So, this one is somewhat, impenetrable in that way. However, it fits this movie like nothing else.
Yeah.
Like, how do you score this impenetrable movie.
Yeah.
It's masquerading as a mass entertainment.
I know, somehow it feels really organic, even though it's like it's so different in each scene. But I think part of that is probably the reason that the soundtrack, they probably listened to it and they're like, well, no one's going to want to sit around listening to atmospheric, future sound of London kind of, ambiance thing, but it's great. And it really adds a lot.
Yeah, for me, it was kind of, it's a great score, but it was kind of like porn. It's all fun and games till the sax comes in. And then, and then so other post-release facts back when they did the final cut, Joanna Cassidy had this curse on top of her in that it was clearly her stunt double in Blade Runner. And
Yes.
people were pointing that out all the time.
Very
she was
bewigged.
running through the sheets of glass. So she put on the same sort of outfit, and they did face replacement technology to clean up those shots. And she was thrilled that she could fit in that costume again.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Was it like 25 years later?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, she was fit in that movie. She's supposed to be she's the crack, assassin killer or whatever. So she's very lean.
And I noticed how cool Harrison Ford was with the snake. A little fact I learned about that was that snake that Joanna Cassidy had was her own snake, a python named Darling. So, yeah, and then so I get why she was cool with it, but Harrison Ford's sitting right there. She puts it on a coat rack, and he's right next to it. I'd be still a little wigged out that there's a snake right there. He handles
He's
it pretty
smooching
cool.
his chin.
Yeah.
Which maybe that's to make a reference to the previous movie he did. It's like, oh, he's friendly with the snake in this one, almost as a reference in a weird way.
Oh, that's funny.
I like snakes.
I didn't think about that. That's a funny idea.
I didn't think about that till just now either.
And, of course, Rutger Hauer died the same year Roy Batty did, 2019.
What?
So there's that.
Wow.
Man, what a performance by him, right? I mean, everything is clocking in this movie. Again, fitting, not making audiences going to it hoping for Indiana Jones happy, but just clocking its own thing. Like his performance in this is just such a it's so like visceral, and everything is those long pauses.
Yeah.
And it's really, he goes full Montalban. I remember I saw Star Trek 2 in a theater, and I hadn't seen that in a theater in forever. And the Khan performance, why are you here? He's got that whole Khan thing going on. He is something in this movie.
He is, and it's quite a it's quite a thing that he has to do, where he needs to convince you that he is sort of superhuman, right? So this guy, he is supposed to be brighter than a human. He's stronger than a human. He's more strategic in thinking and whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think Rutger Hauer, it shows on his face even. I mean, I don't know how he does it, but there's a way that he carries himself in this performance that they didn't have to do any kind of particular makeup for this. I mean, it's really lean. But the effect that he's able to pull off, you look at him and go, yeah, that's what a Nexus 6 would look like. Uh-huh. Sure, that's the next generation of replicant.
Yeah, like a big evil Sting.
Yeah.
Big evil David Bowie. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, 100%. That's a Starman. That's who would come to kill me, a big evil David Bowie.
Evil David Bowie.
Well, Philip K. Dick agreed, calling him the perfect baddie, cold, Aryan, flawless. So there you go.
Flawless.
Yeah, I caught the Aryan thing. Him and Pris were blonde, but I don't think Leon was. But Leon might not have been a part of their convoy. He might have been separate the whole time, I think, right?
I'm not sure. The story seems to set it up that they all seem to rebel at the same time.
Yeah.
That they all jumped ship or whatever. But yeah, it's difficult to know whether they were all part of the same crew or not. For sure, Roy Batty and Prisco together, they seem to be a couple. But...
I love how they were different models, and I was just noticing that this time, that when Pris needs a place to stay, and she meets Sebastian, and she doesn't know how to interact. What's so cool is each of them has these moments where they run out of being able to communicate with people. They run out of, being able to act human.
Yeah.
And that's what the Voight-Kampff test does is,
at some point.
Yeah. You see his eyes when they mention the tortoise thing, and it's like, oh, he's one of them. And the boiled dog with the Sean
Rachel.
Young, Rachel, you're like, oh, she's one of them. But the way she turns on the charm with him, it's just so robotic.
Yeah.
Like to go back to his place because that's what she does. She's a pleasure model. And the same thing with Roy Batty. Like everything is like purely calculating and con because he's the battle model or whatever. It's a lot of personality packed into, kind of, again, an impenetrable characters, the robots,
Yeah.
And two last things. I know we're going to wrap this up, but I'll say the Blade Runner curse was a thing for a while because all the companies you see advertising in the world of Blade Runner eventually tanked.
Right. TDK.
Except for Coca-Cola, but I'll tell you about that. You had RCA gone, Atari gone. Cuisinart survived but had a bankruptcy, and then a new company took them over. Bell Telephone Company, Pan Am, and Coca-Cola survived, but after Blade Runner, they gave us a new Coke, so it didn't go well.
So they were on life support for a little while at least, but they did bounce back.
And also, a lot of people don't see, but pay close attention. In television, an AIDS diet aid from...
Oh, is that true?
No.
Teddy Ruxpin was in there.
Teddy Ruxpin.
That's great. Teddy Ruxpin.
And the last thing I found pretty interesting, you ever see the film Soldier with Kurt Russell?
No, I never have.
I never did.
Oh, okay. Well, now you want to check it out because it was written by David Peoples.
You're right.
Came aboard this script. And he called it a sidequel to Blade Runner. And I saw this film, and one of the things I remember most about it is they just kind of scrap these robot soldiers, put them in a big robot scrapyard, and then a big crane will come in and pull them out if they want to use them again or somehow he gets saved. And there's a scene in that film that he planned to open Blade Runner with like a just big robot scrapyard, and that they come out of perhaps rebel or who knows what.
Oh, wow.
And a bonus. And there's a Tannhauser Gate reference. If you remember, Tannhauser Gate's one of the places Batty references about the things he's seen. There's some war at Tannhauser Gate mentioned in Soldiers, so I think Peoples was like, it's kind of in that world. He wanted to go back and kind of live in that world again, which I get.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool. I'd like to see that. That does sound dramatic. I think, there's a lot of that exploration in this movie of the building of machines in order to make our lives better, but the dehumanizing process that happens in that, right? We lose ourselves, it seems, and it seems we have no value for anything that we create. So even these beautiful, robots, if you will, or androids, which are, obviously, well-designed, genetically designed, whatever, even them, get rid of them, kill them, they're worth nothing.
Yeah.
That dehumanizing process.
Yeah, I mean,
I think the movie plays on that.
They make a big deal, and again, it's a part of the noir thing of like, you're a killer, Deckard. Deckard's a killer. Oh, he's stacked up the bodies. In fact, it's almost a parody because he doesn't come off as the grizzled killer of Unforgiven, the way he's being told as. And so it's almost funny, like the first 3 times Emmett Walsh comes in, he comes and tells some story about, oh my God, he stacked the bodies so high. Oh, this guy right here, hey, kill your mother. Like every time he comes in, like, all right, chill out. Like I'm not buying it really from this guy. But then when he does kill a replicant for the first time, and he gets the shakes and he's like, got to go get booze and all that stuff. Like, you realize, like, man, there's a lot of emphasis on what death means already at that point. But, of course, that builds and builds and builds. But, yeah, that's just, that's interesting that they just talk about him being such a killer and all this stuff. And then they do make such a big deal out of killing, taking lives. What is life?
Yeah.
It's kind of an amazing thing. And it sneaks up on you in this movie.
I think it does.
Because it plays by the noir rules for about the first... Didn't we mark where it kind of just starts to divert? I mean, basically like the unicorn thing. Mm-hmm. When he sits down and plays it, that's like the first time in this movie where it, maybe one of the first scenes where it stops playing noir for a second. And then it's like, he taps a couple notes on the piano and a unicorn shows up out of nowhere. I'm just like, what? Like, that's insane. And then from here on out, the movie stops playing by any other rules. I think it starts not being afraid to be a meditation on this or that, or just have a scene full of longing glances and no dialogue,
Yeah, well, and it to your point, when he and Rachel, the first time that they have a real conversation is back in his apartment She follows him there, right? And because she wants to prove to him she's human.
Yeah.
So she takes out her photograph, talks about the, whatever, these memories or whatever, and then he shatters her with this reality that you were basically made 3 years ago or 4 years ago, and all of these are memory implants, just ripping the soul out of a person right in front of their eyes. So from a film noir perspective too, right? Okay, yeah, you can always have she was a dame and I didn't want her in my life, but you don't have tearing out of soul usually with the, between the two, the female, the femme fatale and the detective. But in this movie, their first relationship, he doesn't want anything to do with her. She's a machine.
Yeah.
And this happens.
Well, and talk about breaking your heart, but doing it futuristic style, telling her that she's a robot and revealing to her that all your memories are lies. Yeah. Now go home. Is that cool? You can have a good night?
Yeah, we good? We good?
I mean, talk about like breaking her heart, really. And that is being the grizzled detective. Let me give you some hard truth, sister. Basically, like, get out of here. Hit the streets, know? Yeah, it's a really interesting, but it doesn't play it. If you're going in for the detective stuff, it's not going to play it any way that you think it is. You know,
it doesn't play it straight.
No.
So he's hard-boiled. He's heroic, but how does this performance stand in the list of Harrison Ford essentials?
Okay,
is there righteous anger?
No,
not really. No,
he's real chill in this.
Too low key. Yeah. Does he point? Adam, did the pointometer measure anything today?
0 points. But a shout in the street, which he was pointing his gun, but I don't count that as a point. That's not really a Harrison Ford point. But I was like, get out of the way, right?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. And then he shouts. One time he screams in pain when he tries to put his dislocated finger back into, whatever. Yeah.
Yes. And I have to count that because Fred Mowry loves when Harrison Ford does those little terse shouts of pain in Raiders of the Lost Ark. So there's plenty of those in Blade Runner. Those count as shouts.
They count.
So then he has. Does he hit a guy?
Yes, he does. He hits Leon.
He hits Leon once. I think that's all we got, though, right?
That was a great. I forgot how interesting that moment is too, because Leon comes up and Leon's pretty threatening.
Yeah,
and he asks him one question. Harrison Ford immediately is like, "You're not here for any good conversation." And he immediately takes the chance to punch him, and nothing happens. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
So we'll add that to the total. That means in these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 movies so far, 9 punches. So taking a different turn that this character does, how Harrison Ford is he in this by percentage?
Not very.
I don't think so either. I think if he's the most Harrison Ford in Raiders, let's say, then no, I don't think that this is definitely on the other end. I mean, it's maybe not regarding Henry, but
I mean, he's a hero because he is a detective guy supposedly stopping crimes. I mean, they throw that it's an alt version of all that. So I mean, they're throwing that all into question, but it's playing that game and casting him in that role. So I mean, he is like another classic type of character out of fiction.
Yeah, but the swagger's gone.
Swagger's gone.
And that part of it, I think the Harrison Ford swagger is a big part of him, and I think they really, he's down and out in this one. He's washed up. He's an alcoholic, and he's and he doesn't even like what he does. So even if he is good at it, he hates it.
Yeah.
That's not like Indiana Jones, where he's good at it and he loves it.
Yeah.
It's his whole life. So that
did it with Han Solo.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it knocked me down to 40%. Then I was going 50.
Maybe that low.
It might be 40.
Yeah, I mean, because I know we have. I mean,
but this is proof you can be a low percentage of Harrison Ford and still be great.
Yeah, I know it, right? Yeah, it's not a knock. I mean, he's not super Harrison Ford in it, but I'm glad.
I mean, how Ridley Scott is this movie versus how Harrison
That's
Ford is this movie?
110%.
Right,
It's 110% Ridley Scott.
I mean, you're going to get about an extra 10 or 20% of Ridley Scott, and that's going to eat up some Harrison Ford.
That's true.
That's going to eat up some Emmett Walsh. That's going to eat up everybody.
Some Joe Turkel.
Yeah. How Joe Turkel is this movie? Less than it could be.
Yes.
All right, well, let's end with final thoughts. Mine will be another fun fact because I pulled a bunch of them. If you go to the Prometheus Blu-ray, Adam, I'm sure you do that routinely, there's a bonus feature on there that suggests Eldon Tyrell was the mentor for Peter Weyland.
The Weyland-Yutani Corporation?
So there you go. Tying it all together. Alien and Blade Runner.
Oh,
that's pretty good.
Nice. Building new worlds. Off-world colonies.
Off-world
What were they
colonies.
trying to build an alien? Oh, boy.
Oh, there it is.
An off-world colony.
That's an interesting idea.
Uh-huh. Oh, I think we've tied it together.
I think I will have, if I can have my last thought is this. Harrison, if you're out there, buddy, if by some chance, by some miracle, you get to hear this, watch this movie again. You're going to like it. It's really, really good, and you're great in it. And everybody else that's in it is also really great. So I hope you learn to love it as much as I do, because it deserves it.
I mean, you could say you don't do much detecting, but this movie doesn't need much detecting. It's only a little bit about detecting.
That's right.
It's playing the game to play the game and then turning into a European art film.
Yeah,
because
and then
it's,
it's
a
the
Ridley
Seventh
Scott movie.
Seal after that.
Yeah, right, exactly. Then it's a Michelangelo Antonioni movie daring you to like it afterwards.
Final thoughts, Adam.
So every time they go over to J.F. Sebastian's house, it is filled with nightmares. It is filled with mannequins and dolls and weird things that stare and turn and jiggle and gyrate. And you're just like, and of course it's, Blade Runner. So how many do you want, Ridley? I'm thinking 84. We were thinking maybe 9 or 10. But it's a room full of nightmares. It's just a scary collection of, weird burn baby dolls and things. And when there's the attack at the end, it turns into like full haunted house. Like that's like a very haunted. So it's just interesting. This movie takes its influence here and there, but during that sequence, like it's clearly like a haunted house. Like when Pris gets shot, he holds on her gyrating for a long time.
Yeah, it's almost
and
Alien at that point,
screaming.
right? He's still kind of pulling from Alien.
Yeah. So it was just like the haunted house aspect of this end. And as baddies chasing him through the house and running through walls and he can be everywhere. He's a ghost. Suddenly he's above you. Haha. And he's saying things like, 1, 2, blah, blah, blah. He's doing all the Dracula stuff. And it was just so interesting how that became the haunted house movie at the end.
Sucked blood? Did I miss
Yeah,
something?
that's true, though. You're right. This movie covers a tremendous amount of real estate.
But of course, Blade Runner can only make Blade Runner choices. I mean, it's when you make a movie as confidently as he did this, all of its choices are its choices and only its choices, So I was just watching that and I'm like, is haunted house a good idea? But I also think Ridley's a guy that doesn't want a scene to have no influence or nothing. He doesn't want to have a scene just be a scene. So it's like, you got to drive in some direction, which gives all the major thematic stuff, like all the, what is it to be alive and the religious connotations and all that stuff. So it's just, I think it's another thing of like, well, it's just a chase through a house if I don't add more to it. So let's make it a nightmare.
Yeah.
Okay, well, all right. Can we get, how many nightmares you want, Ridley? I'm thinking 80, 90, maybe 100. And filled with smoke and set things on fire and raining. Is that cool?
Yeah.
No, more rain.
Diffused light through the Venetian blinds.
Yeah, maybe we kind of can't see anything. Is that cool? Does that work for you guys? Work for drive-ins? Sure, Ridley. Like he won every argument on this movie except for the final one for the first release.
All right, and that is Blade Runner, and it really isn't. This is an unfinished conversation. You could go on forever about this movie, and so, but we are glad to have Dave Sachs with us to talk about it.
Hey,
Dave Sachs, everybody.
What a pleasure. What a treat.
Of course, you can find all of our old shows, Movie Guys interviews, the old showcast, old appearances of Dave Sachs at themovieguys.net as well. And you can tour movie locations in Los Angeles at the Movie Guys LA Film Locations Tour. Just go to lafilmlocationstour.com. And soon I want this to take off so I can expand to downtown, so I can include the Bradbury Building, and I can include the 2nd Street tunnel, where those couple of shots in a tunnel took place in the film as well. But for now, there's those are downtown. Not quite going downtown yet, but when I do, that Ghostbusters, there's going to be a whole lot added to the downtown tour. But go to LA Film Locations Tour.
I got to get Tech Noir on that tour of yours, Paul.
You got to what?
When you go downtown, the alley where Kyle Reese arrived and Tech Noir are my requests.
Right. Yes. So that wraps Blade Runner. Join us next week when we talk about Blade Runner 2049.
Paul, that doesn't come out for 35 more years.
Oh, then our podcast about it will probably come out in 35 years as well, the way we're going. All right, thanks, everybody.
I'm trying.